Hello, everyone. Welcome to Voice of Dr. Yan, and I'm your host, Dr. Li-Meng Yan. In this episode, I'm so happy that our friend Edward Haugland again came to our broadcast, and then we will discuss the very big issue about recently discovered, reported secret Chinese illegal biolab in California, as well as CCP's cover front and the related espionage network. So hi, Howard. Welcome back to the Voice of Dr. Yan.
Well, Dr. Yan, always a pleasure to be with you. Always an interesting conversation. Thank you for having me on.
So before we start the discussion today, I just want to briefly let our audience, if they haven't read this report about the secret illegal Chinese lab in California, I want just briefly read the original report, which was published on 28th July. That was just within 1 week. And it revealed an astonishing fact that there is an illegal, mysterious Chinese lab in Ridley, California, which has stored almost 20 different infectious pathogens. And also, there were almost 1,000 lab mouse were found abandoned or kind of kept in a very inhumane and also unsafe condition in the abandoned warehouse in that area. So what exactly happened? Let's see. So the city of Ridley officials actually found this mysterious lab, and this was in the building that been illegally operated since October 2022 by a company called Prestige Biotech. And the lab was used to produce COVID-19 tests and pregnancy tests. So it is called as a diagnostic lab, which means like what we have seen just to explain to our audience, like what we have seen during COVID-19, you went to maybe CVS or to the local clinic and they do the nucleic acid test for you to run the PCR or even the quick test. Then this is called diagnostic labs. So they don't need too many equipment. And also, there is no need at all to maintain and use mouse for such labs. And so the officials found this lab, and they had called CDC, FBI, and the local toxic substance control and State Department of Health and local public health and so many departments to work on this case. And since March 16 of this year, they have got the warrant and inspect the abandoned warehouse located in at 850 I Street of Ridley. And according to the reports that it was filed in Superior Court, investigators discovered that one room of the abandoned warehouse was used to produce COVID-19 and pregnancy tests. In other room, they found blood, tissue, and other body fluid samples. They also found thousands of vials that contains unlabeled fluids. Unlabeled. I have checked the photos of the court file. I believe some of the label are removed purposely because definitely, even you have a kitchen, you will label your bottles. And how could you have thousands of vials of bottles of important this kind of samples or reagents which contain the infectious pathogens, which is like the local officers describe it like the biohouse of horror. How could you remove the labels? I cannot imagine this kind of mess up situation. And then they found 900 genetically engineered mouse engineered to catch and carry COVID-19. This is the quote what come from the owner's email in the after the inspection. The owner has admitted that those mouse are very expensive, even could worth $1 million or over US dollars. And they were designed and spent 6 years to be used to catch and carry COVID-19. Although I have seen the picture, I mean, those mouse, if they worth $1 million and they are kept in such terrible environment, basically it's like you hide your diamond in the mud. This mouse cannot be used for any real scientific experiment unless they just want to do some unethical experiment to get some rough results. And so now currently the case is still going on, and journalists reported it. We start to know more details, and I also obtained the court file, and I spent 2 days to read this over 100 pages files. And according to the document, it has at least 20 potential infectious pathogens in that lab, include chlamydia, E. coli, and also the bacteria just for our audience to know it easily, the bacteria can cause pneumonia, can cause tuberculosis, and also they can cause TB, and they can cause meningitis, which is an infection in your brain and can lead to 10% death rate. And also, it contains virus which can cause hepatitis B and C, which usually infect people through other food. Hepatitis B, you can get it from food, but also both B and C hepatitis can infect people through the blood contact and sex contact, and also HPV 1 and 5. HPV we're going to explain more, and rubella, RSV, and of course, it should have the samples for COVID-19, because in this kind of lab, they claim they are working on COVID. Also, CDC has found samples of malaria. This is very, shocking, because they post the picture of the malaria sample of this lab. On the photo, there are Chinese character. It says these are the malaria positive blood sample, and it is a serum from India, and the date is October 11, 2006. And also it labels positive for PF. And what is PF? PF means the most life-threatening type of malaria. So that means these are also positive for the most life-threatening malaria type. And this type of malaria was found in Nigeria back to 2000. So we have seen not only one vial of malaria samples, because in that box labeled like this, it has also labeled that 1, 2, 3, 4 to use it to indicate from weak to strong positive of the samples. And all these things, they are just piled in the fridges, and there are 30 fridges found from that warehouse. Imagine how many samples they have. I can tell you, as a virologist working in the emerging infectious disease lab at the University of Hong Kong for 5 years, I'm even not sure whether the whole School of Public Health at the University of Hong Kong have 30 fridges. Those are very expensive, big fridges. And according to the picture, it's full of samples, reagents. Many things look like the blood, and you really don't know what it is. And clearly, even the officials said in the interview that they don't think the owners have responded them honestly. And so that's why we are working on a lot of this kind of research and also going through our network back to China to try to get more information about the mysterious, terrible, and I don't know how to describe. I would say all these virus, all these pathogens, plus the mouse and the reagents, it could cause many pandemic in the United States to kill tens of million Americans even, because if the amount of the samples are so huge, I really cannot imagine the worst situation. And so, Edward, so this is the background for our audience, and I have sent you the background information as we discussed before. So could you let our audience know what's your first impression? Will you start to read this news, and what do you think?
Yeah. So when I first heard about this, I was really surprised, unpleasantly surprised. This is a horrific discovery. What was even more horrific is that they found out about this, as you know, in the background information back in March, but the reporting on it hadn't come out until just July here. And with the FBI, the CDC, and other elements involved, it raises an obvious question. How many more labs like this are potentially in the United States? And so a couple of things jumped out at me is when you talked about the 900 mice and how expensive they were, being a layperson in this area, $1 million for the mice, that's a lot of money. I mean, just for my own edification and maybe for the listeners as well, is how does one then obtain these mice? Are they have to buy them from a certain process, a certain supplier? So you're the interviewee, but I'd like to understand it, because I think it's important to discussion. Same thing with the sample from India, the malaria sample. No one can just buy this stuff over the supermarket counter, right? You have to go through a certain process to buy these things. So for the mice and the malaria, for my own edification, but I think the listeners can you help us understand a little bit more about that?
Okay, this is something actually a very good question, but it would be ignored by the ordinary people, because if they don't have this idea, they may thought, yes, you can purchase mouse like you buy the pet from the shop. Actually, the lab mouse are very special strains, and even we don't know what exactly genetic engineer was done on this 1,000 mouse. What I can tell you, even for the basic lab mouse, which is actually already, we can say, decades ago, we have been using after special genetic engineer, because either it was small white mouse or small black mouse or small brown mouse. These are all special. You won't see them in the wild. So because they are also fragile, and they are small, they're cute. And let me say, I work in the University of Hong Kong. In those 5 years in the infectious disease lab, because I focus on a lot of experiment using mouse. So I have been conducted around 1,000 mouse by myself per year. And what I want to let you know is, first, it is very expensive to maintain these mouse. And no matter what kind of engineered it is. So this mouse, let me tell you, even when we work at the University of Hong Kong, so the faculty member have the lowest price to pay to the animal lab to maintain your mouse. Still, every month it will cost even reach to almost $10,000. This is just for the basic bedding, drinking, and food. They don't charge you for the big facility. And this facility has to be very strictly inspected and annually checked, and very professional. You have to make sure there are over 20 staffs working in that building for the mouse, and they work there to maintain the proper ventilation, proper humidity, proper temperature, proper health condition. Because if not, your mouse, once they get infected to any kind of pathogen from outside, all the study cannot be used for publication or research. Also, they will die, and that will disrupt all your project. And also, for this mouse, if you want to purchase them, even for the basic mouse, Babel C, B6, C57, all these strains, you order them from your animal lab or directly come from the commercial lab, animal lab. So one of the most famous company is called Jackson Lab, based in the United States. They provide this kind of strings of mouse. I have checked the list of their price. At least the basic ordinary mouse, one pair, one female, one male, cost $60 and then plus shipping. And they also said clearly you have to provide the license. This is necessary. And
Yes.
I have seen other people discussed on my Twitter. They are professional in US in this field. So we have the same experience on this, same knowledge. So how could they get it? But I also know back to some labs and also in China from several years ago, before COVID, there was very big kind of labs. They initially copy paste the Jackson lab. They learn the technology and they even bring some string of the mouse back and try to clone that. So they can do it by themselves. Initially come from Beijing and then later, because Xi Jinping has given a lot of money for people to do the CRISPR or other technology, so they can produce the lab animals. And if the government wants someone to get it, definitely they can get it. But in US, I would say for such a poor condition lab, unlicensed in California, yes, it's unlicensed. It was registered in Nevada. So I won't say they can legally get the lab mouse. And definitely that is not a legal lab in the warehouse.
No, so I really appreciate that, because what really jumps out at me, a couple things come to mind here, because this is, of course, not my area of expertise, but what's coming to mind here is, okay, you had billions of US dollars being spent untracked for COVID-19 testing and COVID-19 handouts. So one thing that comes to mind for this lab being stood up is a lot of people were ripping off the United States government and setting up an illegal lab like this to do testing. They could garnish billions of US dollars, and we've seen that fraud in the US. The other aspect is that we have such open and porous borders now. And as we've talked before, you have a number of military-age men from China, 10,000 to 20,000 now or more in the United States, who are coming in here. And so there's a number of just very nefarious scenarios that could come to mind here. The 30 fridges of materials with all that stuff stored there is very scary from the biological aspect, as you mentioned, with the potential for a number of different pandemics. So if this to me, hopefully is a one-off, but it's highly unlikely from my perspective that this would be a one-off situation. I mean, what it also shows is that China, in unrestricted warfare, as we've also talked about, they have no morals, they have no compunction about human life, especially when you're viewed as the adversary. And so their implementation of police stations across the United States, this illegal lab here with all these different types of vials of infectious diseases and such, all that sort of scares the heck out of me. The other last thing I'll say here really quickly is I remember during COVID when China sent some agricultural seeds to the U.S. via the U.S. mail.
Yes.
Okay. And for these types of infectious diseases, you could use the U.S. mail and send this type of stuff if you have the right treatments and stuff. I would assume biologically to either infect or cause other consternation or harm, or even release them in different cities. But I mean, there's just a number of nightmare scenarios here.
Yes, sir. Actually, I want to add more response to your last questions that you're talking about how could they get the infectious samples. They should not get so many infectious samples. So let's say, for example, the malaria sample, right? Even they didn't label it as a malaria sample back to 2006. Let's just image how could this kind of unlicensed lab by accidentally through testing get patient sample of malaria in California, because annually around 300 cases of malaria in California. So by what kind of probability, right, they could get this kind of sample from test? And also in the infectious disease lab, we will, for the samples, first we will storage it in a very, very cautious ways. Like I would say that among these samples, many of them should be kept in biosafety level 3 laboratories, at least. But they put it to even no biosafety level warehouse. And so if you have seen these pictures and you image, it's like you pile all the things in your fridge, and once you open the door, they can fall down. But all of these are infectious things and you don't know what it is. And why do you remove the labels? I mean, if you are the normal person working on legal things instead, unless this is something you want to cover up, right? And how could they deliver so many samples? According to the court file, there are many, many big boxes come from China. And this lab is called Prestige. It was registered under 2 Chinese people based in China, and by accident they are from my hometown Qingdao. And we are working on more information about these mysterious owners. It seems they are back in China now. And also, I can tell you for infectious disease lab, you have to obey the most strict regulation to send the sample. If not, UPS, FedEx, whatever international shipping agency won't receive your box, even for maybe half milliliter. This kind of infectious sample, you have to fulfill a lot of forms and pack it into a very big box with layers, like to prevent prevent you broken it, and if you broken it, the second layer will absorb this kind of fluid, and then outside there is a big box, foam box. Altogether, definitely we didn't see this in the labs. And the most important thing is people may not notice, for a testing lab you don't need animal at all. So there is no necessary for a testing lab to keep any animal, and there is no facility for them to order and keep animal. The money, the value of the animal and the maintenance fee are so high. And also, they said the court file said the 30 fridge was still, most of them were working when the officials inspected the warehouse. Imagine how expensive the electricity should be. So why, if this is a lab want to make quick money in California, why do they spend so much to maintain fridge, manage to get mouse, and hide them there? So, I feel this is very concerning. What we have still like 2 minutes before we have a short rest. Could you now let people know you're thinking about the lab?
No. So this is, I'm so glad that you've raised this up because it's very concerning. There's so many red flags here. It's good that the FBI is involved. One has to wonder why the Defense Threat Reduction Agency or Special Operations Command, who oversees weapons of mass destruction here in the United States, hopefully they're involved as well. What is the intelligence community doing? What are they now looking at across the United States? I mean, there are just so many concerns here from what you've discussed here. The best possible scenario is they were just trying to rip us off and get some different aspects for COVID money. But as you mentioned with the mice and everything else, there's obviously that there's other aspects here under work that we definitely have to further investigate.